Morning, you amazing people out in this world, creating more good and inspiring others to do so in the process. Ah, it's a interesting Tuesday so far. Um, there are many challenges that you have when you're building your personal brand, whether it's environmental challenges, emotional challenges, mental. So many different things can keep you from, I guess, achieving the goal that you want. Morning, Andre. Hope I pronounced that correctly. But yeah, so this morning I kind of want to switch things up and give a little bit of an outline of what we'll be covering. Um, One of the things that I had to face and deal with over the past year, especially, has been dealing with burnout. And it's one of those things that kind of hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting, right? I was working full time, coming home, working on what is now my full time hustle. Um, and it kind of hit a moment where it didn't matter how much I loved designing, it didn't matter how much I loved programming or writing. Every time I opened the screen, I just could not do anything. And at first I was like, oh, maybe, the projects that I'm working on aren't inspiring. So I'd find new projects. I'd work through those, get them done. But that feeling that I used to get when I first started just wasn't there anymore. And it wasn't until a really, really long time did I realize that I was dealing with burnout. And how I dealt with it was, I'm still not even sure. I know a huge part of that was the community and people around me, right? Not everyone wants to see you win, even though they may be cheering you on. But those that really, really do will do things that just kind of stand out from the crowd. And so that was the number one thing. The second thing was kind of acknowledging that giant. There was one of my favorite stories, of course, is David and Goliath. Many people think that David was the underdog in the story. He was not. If you kind of backtrack, he was a shepherd boy. He was really, really good with slingshots and all that kind of stuff. It was Goliath who was actually the underdog because breaking it down, and Malcolm Gladwell really covered this really, really well. Goliath was telling David to come to him, right? But it wasn't until David acknowledged that giant did he say, all right, I can take this thing down. And so for me, dealing with burnout, the first thing that I had to do was acknowledge the fact that there was this giant there and that I had to deal with it and that I had to figure out a way to get around it. And so asking for help. Morning, Wayne. How's it going? And so, yeah, asking for help was the number one thing. Kind of just saying, hey, I'm feeling really burnt out right now. Morning, Tia. Hope your morning's going well. And pretty much just covering this morning a few things. Kind of left it in the description. Burnouts. You versus you. And kind of pushing past that resistance to being awesome. Morning, Shannon. Definitely need to catch up. See, you've been doing some pretty cool things on your end. But yeah, burnout. It was real, and I had to deal with it. And asking for help was that number one thing that kind of got me through. Acknowledging the giant in the room, acknowledging that these things were, present, that I wasn't alone in that process. And then the next thing that really, really helped was the fact that, hey, I now have help, and I kind of realized at the end of the day, it was me versus me, right? And so facing or staring down that kind of reflection, as one would say, was a thing that really expanded the entire, the entire picture, really and truly. It opened it up in a way where I was like, all right, this is what I want to accomplish. This is the obstacle that's happening here. How can I work around it? How can I reignite that creative spark? And much of that was going and, getting to know other people, finding out what they're doing, what drives them, what inspires them. And then additionally, going out and helping others, right? Taking a step out of my usual day to day, inserting a pattern interrupt, if you will. And from there, I started to see change and, momentum started to build. And from there, I was like, all right, what I'm really, really trending towards, and I think, everything makes sense, starting out in design, then learning programming, and then moving into other areas, there were a lot of transitions. And instead of looking at it as an obstacle, I viewed it more as, where is this next transition going to? And from there, it became a lot easier to build in moments of clarity. Looking at the things that I want to accomplish where I am now and the skill sets required to kind of fill in those gaps or, take me across those steps, it was easy for me to say, all right, having an interview for a company that I wanted to work for so badly, not go my way was one of those things that really, really put things into perspective. And I began to realize that it was a strategy of design, applying design thinking into areas that can actually help people was a thing that gave me life. And when it comes down to like your personal brand and figuring everything out, it's really easy to get lost in the semantics. It's really easy to say, I need to do this thing over here, I need to do that thing over there, I need to do the next thing. And then you may have environmental things, like, your Wi-Fi may go out, or, you may have forgotten to charge your phone and something happens where you're in the middle of something highly important and it didn't save any of your work, or your laptop, or whatever it is. And it's in the moments after, how you react to it, how you deal with it, will help you either leverage that circumstance or experience for the better, or will set you back and throw you into a place where you think that, oh, I tried, I didn't succeed, so I'm not going to try again. And so it's kind of like going back to that really popular thing that everyone's been talking about, the fixed mindset or growth mindset. I feel like throughout history, people like, I don't know, there's so many people, right? Martial arts, how is this name slipping me right now? One of the greatest martial artists of all time, right? He said, be fluid like water. But if you look at the power of water, right, its persistence, it can carve out paths, it can do so many different things, it can shape, it can smooth, it can sharpen. Yeah, right? So when we really think about all of these things that happen to us on a day-to-day basis, when we think about the obstacles that we face when we're building out that idea, when we're collaborating with someone else, when we just really feel stuck and just want to feel an ounce of moving forward, the easiest thing to do really is lean in. You can't sit back and expect that, food is going to fall into your lap, right? Biblically, it speaks that, hey, if you don't work, you don't eat. And no matter how much you buy into the hype of residual income, right, there is work that's involved in setting that up. And so there are no shortcuts to anything. There are going to be times when life is going to try you. There are going to be times when things seem just completely overwhelming. But take a breath. Take a moment to really look at where you are now in comparison to where you were before. Because chances are, where you are now was a place you were praying that you were long ago, and you didn't really realize that there were going to be obstacles that are bundled in with that. Because you were only praying for the more positive side of things. You were praying for, the cake at the end, but you didn't really look and say, hey, to get that cake assembled, morning Tiffany, morning David, but yeah, to get that cake assembled, you have to put the flour, you have to put the sugar, you have to put some vanilla in, some cinnamon, depending on what kind of cake you're making. The ingredients need to be combined, and there's a process. So one thing that we tell our clients a lot is the process is the product. If you try to rush the process, if you try to take shortcuts in the process, you are going to be left with holes and shortcuts in your product. And oftentimes, this product that we're referencing with them is their brand. Whether their brand is being displayed via its ambassadors of its website or its logo or its marketing collateral, you have to take the time to understand and listen. And pretty design gets you only so far. It's the one thing that I've learned. Aesthetics, they're great. They make things look cool. But the best products or best interactions are things that actually made me feel like I accomplished something, like I saved time, like I was able to gain value back to my life, right? And so when you go out and you think about the interactions and experiences that you have, these are things that are building on the foundation of your personal brand. They're manifesting their ways, right? Like one of my cousins is in here, and he's a pilot. And looking at his passion for that is like super amazing, right? Like I remember when I wanted to be a pilot, and then I realized that, yeah, that probably wasn't my thing because heights aren't my friend. Irony, right? Always upward is kind of my mantra. Anyways, it's one of those things where you look at it, you're passionate, it drives you, it helps you to stick through the tough days, it helps you to weather the storm and keep doing, amazing achievements because this is what you're immersing yourself in. And there's a book that I'm reading now called Bounce, and I forgot the author. Yeah, right? Like, heights are no joke, but I have gone skydiving, which is pretty fun, and I do want to do that again. But yeah, it's one of those things where in this book, Bounce is talking about the structure of sports, and it's saying really and truly, the greatest sports people had a couple things going for them. Number one, opportunity, or exposure to the opportunity to level up, or be viewed in a way that they can be placed in the system to level up. And two, they practiced a lot, right? And so going back again, Malcolm Gladwell kind of distilled this whole thing down to, if you have 10 years of practice, down into 10,000 hours theory, right? And so the more you practice, the more you kind of dig deep into something, is the better you're going to get good at it. The more your brain is going to remember all the nuances that go into that process. And so each mindset that you have, each, thought that you tell yourself is going to manifest itself somehow in your actions. Whether you think you can't do that project, whether you think you can't overcome that obstacle, whether you think you can't push past the resistance that is oftentimes yourself, right? And Eddie kind of covered this in one of his morning mantras, where he was saying, there's one line where he's saying, you look in the mirror and say to yourself, I forgive you, right? Forgiveness is such a huge part of the day-to-day experience as a creative. It's a huge part of the day-to-day experience of being human, because we're our own worst critic. Like, do you ever realize how harshly you think about yourself, about the things that you do, especially if you are a creative? You're beating yourself into the ground, sometimes unnecessarily. Like, I can't begin to even say, like, and it doesn't even matter how many times people tell you how, good you are at something. You just kind of look and say, I don't know what you're looking at, but, the work that I see in front of me that I put out is garbage. And in one way, it's really, really good. It pushes you not to be complacent. It pushes you to keep leveling up and trying to find a way to be better. But the downside to that is we sometimes fall into the deep end of those thoughts, where we're like, oh, I'm so horrible at this thing that I can never be that great. And so we limit ourselves. We limit the things that we take risks on. We limit ourselves in the things that we push forward in. So that was a thing that I kind of realized a lot. A lot of it came to culmination last year. And I decided 2018 was not going to be that way. And so the final part of really pushing forward and pushing out the resistance comes down to making the choice and being intentional about it. If you want to work out, lose weight, do it. Start small, right? If you want to write a book, start by, writing a couple sentences around a thought, right? If you want to collaborate with someone on an initiative, Reach out and say hello, right? It all starts with something small. Nothing great was ever built overnight. Nothing great that we enjoy today, right? The traffic light. How many times did a car accident have to happen before someone said, you know what would be a good idea? A way to actually keep people organized when they pull up to an intersection, right? There are going to be things that we're going to get bruised on. We're going to fall down. But what matters is what we do next with that information, with that knowledge, with that experience. Are we going to turn it into wisdom, or are we going to turn it into something that keeps us in the comfort zone? So, go out, create something amazing, keep aiming always upward, keep inspiring others to do so in the process, and let me know what you're up to. I'm curious. Talk to you guys soon.